Good afternoon. Martin Gerrish was my mentor, and he handed over Octad-One Inc. to me. After the Grove Playhouse was taken away in San Diego, California. Soon, we found the Manhattan Playhouse and started having wonderful plays and marvelous actors and actresses in Lakeside, California. I will always remember Martin Gerrish, and he knew my Uncle Victor Buono, and both of them acted and were awarded at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, California. This book would never have been written without the influence and support of one extremely important man, none other than Mr. Martin Gerrish, the founder and president. He was much more to me than the two titles he successfully held for 20 years. Martin was my mentor and friend. My first introduction to Martin took place in 1990 when I stopped over at the Grove Playhouse, which he had just established within the last year. I was told by other actors within San Diego that he was the one director you wanted to work with. Once informed and seeking to learn from the best, I opened the front doors to the theater and entered the foyer. Immediately, my attention was drawn to my left, and there, standing in front of Gertrude Stang, sat, was open-jawed actor Pat Melke and Martin Gerrish. He was tall, sophisticated, a seasoned veteran of the stage, and he was glaring at me as if to ask, "What in hell do you want? Can't you see I'm rehearsing?" I promptly made known my intentions, and he gruffly hurried me on my way, advising, "Come another day when we're not rehearsing." I vividly recall feeling slightly humiliated by his response, but also invigorated, knowing I had just met a true man of theater who didn't mince words with those whom he speaks. I was currently performing in No Coward's Blithe Spirit at Onstage Productions, but it wasn't long before I returned to the Grove Playhouse to audition, and it was Kind Lady, which would be directed by Pat Melke. I was cast as the wily, petty criminal and grossly unattractive Mr. Edwards. It wasn't until late in our rehearsal schedule that I shared a short conversation with Mr. Gerrish. I had a few moments off stage and was preparing a cup of coffee when he entered the small theater kitchen. He too grabbed a cup and calmly poured it full of hot coffee, and without even a slight gaze, nonchalantly said, "I like what you're doing out there." Taken back, being somewhat in awe of him, I replied, "Thank you." He then walked from the room, leaving me quietly asking myself, was he talking to me? This was my first opportunity being directed by Martin Gerrish. The one moment which stands out the most was when during rehearsal, the plantation owner's wife pulls out a loaded revolver, pointed it squarely at me, and then pulls the trigger. Having rehearsed this scene countless times before, I was terribly caught off guard when the revolver suddenly and loudly let out a magnificent blast, spewing particles of discharged paper from the carriages everywhere and sending me backwards to the floor. As I looked up, I saw her continually walking forward, pulling the trigger and discharging 4 more rounds squarely at me, as I squirted like an upside-down spider to escape her wrath. As she finished with her last blast, I jumped to my feet and ran into the theater seats. This was followed by a riotous explosion of laughter from Martin and my fellow actors. The revolver had been loaded with extra-sized carriages. The letter finished a successful run, and I've never forgotten the terror of being shot that day. It did add a sense of realism to every performance thereafter. Working at the Grove Playhouse was quite special and reminded me of what it may have been like at the group theater in the 1930s in New York. It was a committed community of actors and directors who placed the integrity of the production above all else. Finances are always necessary, but at the Grove Playhouse it was all about the play and nothing else. Martin Gerrish was originally from Maine. He was professionally involved in the theater for nearly 50 years and shined on stage at the old Globe Theater in San Diego, California, as Henry II in The Lion in Winter, receiving an Atlas Award for his performance, and also playing Big Daddy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. He designed sets, sewed costumes, constructed props, and had his hand in nearly everything. Martin was a true man of theater, and when you stood in his presence, you knew you were next to greatness.